Oh man, I forgot to take a picture for today. Gotta get my Instagram shot. Oh yes. Yep. Time to edit my pics. Oh yeah, oh yeah, oh yeah, oh yeah, preset, yeah, preset on my preset, yeah. Alright, now just to upload and done. Ah man, what the heck is this? Ooh boy, that's delicious. What's up, you lovely people, and welcome back to the channel. So glad to see y'all back for another video. For those of you that might be new to the channel, welcome. Thank you so much for clicking on this video. Please consider hitting that subscribe button, the like button, and the little bell so that you get notified when I post new videos. For all things filmmaking on this channel, maybe a little photography, maybe a little business, who knows? But before we get into it, seriously, thank you guys so much. As I'm making this video, I actually just hit 50 subscribers on the channel as well. So yay, we're growing. I want to keep it consistent this year, grow with you guys, share my tips that I have for you, and hopefully you guys appreciate it. You learn something and you come along for the journey. So thank you. All right, so today on Workflow Wednesday, we're talking all about the best export settings to use for Instagram. Most of you are probably using it to host your work or portfolios, and putting up the best quality of your work is very important. So some disclaimers before we get started. Number one, these settings are what works best for me and what I've seen widely used probably by a lot or most people, I'd say, on Instagram. If you have other settings that works for you, then that's cool. Let us know down below in the comments if something works for you. Maybe we can all learn something. All right, number two, everything gets compressed. That's the name of the game for Instagram. There's no way that you can get around it. All of the content that you upload to Instagram is compressed in some way. Obviously that helps for the smooth running of their app as well. But with using these tips, you can ensure that the compression is either minimal or you preserve the most quality for your work going up. If the Instagram algorithm can compress your work less, then obviously you preserve more quality. It looks better to those people that are viewing your content, and so you get the best quality work up on your profile. All right, number three, and maybe most importantly, I'm gonna show you the workflow that I use for Adobe products because that's what I use to edit things like my photos and some of my videos. So just keep that in mind. Now, these tips are universal, so just know that even if you're not using things like Adobe Lightroom, which I'm gonna be showing you what I use in Adobe Lightroom, for example, these tips are universal, so you can pretty much apply it to any program out there. Most programs have some version of what I'm talking about. So as long as you know how to work with your program and your software and you know where to find these settings, just Google them if you work with something that I'm unaware of. But as long as you know, you can use these tips and apply it to your work. All right, battery died in the middle of this, but we're back. We're finishing this tonight before I go to bed, because I don't want to do this in the morning. All right, so with all of that said, there's 4 things you need to keep in mind before you hit the export button. Apparently, I really love lists this video. Number 1 though, sharpening is very, very important, and there's a very, very good way to do it. Number 2, aspect ratios are super important, and we'll go over all the ones that are supported for Instagram. 3, make sure you know all the resolutions that work with whatever you're posting to, whether that's video or on your feed. And number 4, make sure you're editing for whatever format you're presenting in. Obviously, you're not gonna edit the same way for digital Instagram versus print media, but make sure you're editing to get the best results for the platform that you're using. With that being said, let's talk about each one of these. All right, so number one is sharpening. Now, there are two ways of doing this, and I use both of them to achieve the best results. Now, in Lightroom Classic, which I use to edit all of my photos, let's say I have all my edits done for this photo that I want to post, for example, I'm going to go to the details section and come down to sharpening. I usually bump this amount up fairly high, anywhere from 85 to about 125-ish. Typically, I'll be zoomed in somewhere around my subject's face for portraits that I do, and then also mess around with the radius and detail until I get the sharpening exactly to where I want it. Now, you may think that that looks very artificial or digitally sharpened, and you'd be right, but we have the masking feature, which drastically reduces the range of where the sharpening is applied. So, one trick I like to use is to hit the Alt or Option button on Macs and start moving the slider around until I'm only affecting the edges and certain features, but not the majority of the face. This will also reinforce those features and sharpness after it hits the Instagram compression. So going to export settings, I also scroll down to the output sharpening section and make sure the sharpen for option is checked, select sharpen for screen, and the amount I usually leave to standard. Now, before you hit that export button is number two, we need to talk about aspect ratios. Instagram says that they support anything from 1:9:1 to 1 ratio all the way up to 4:5. Now, usually 4:5 is what I stick to when uploading all of my feed posts. Always stick to 9:16 for videos, stories, IGTV, and Reels content. Now, there are several reasons for this, but first of all, it's because for video content, it'll make your video take up the most amount of real estate on the screen and also make your content more immersive. Now, for posts, I typically stick to 4:5 aspect ratio because it takes up the most amount of space in people's visual real estate on their feed. You're more likely to catch someone's attention when it takes more time to scroll past your picture and they can actually focus on the photo and the details in the photo. All right, so this is simple enough to achieve in editing. You just want to head over to the crop section or aspect ratio settings for your program and select 4:5. For videos, you just want to make sure that you're working with the right timeline settings and resolution, which we'll talk about now. All right, so number three, resolution goes hand in hand with what we were just talking about with aspect ratios. The most Instagram will allow wide is 1080 pixels, which if you're looking at a 4:5 photo ends up being 1080p by 1350 high. When you're going to export, you want to make sure that you come down to image sizing and check resize to fit. I select width and height for this setting and then put 1080p by 1350p. Make sure this matches your aspect ratio or else you'll end up with very weirdly squeezed images. The pixels per inch resolution doesn't really matter. That's more of a printing thing and won't matter right now since we're uploading to a digital platform. For video, make sure that the timeline that you're using is 1080 by 1920. You'll have to do some resizing and keyframing to keep your content in frame if you're using content shot for another platform like YouTube, or you can use features like auto reframe in Premiere Pro. Video will be linked up in the cards somewhere where I've already done a video to show you that feature, so that's a great one to check out. Or the smart reframe option in the latest paid version of DaVinci Resolve 17. If you don't have the paid version, you can do the same thing with keyframing the position of your video, but it's just more tedious. And last but not least, make sure that you're editing for the medium that you're presenting your work in. So for example, if you're showing your work off on Instagram, make sure you keep in mind the restrictions and the compression that you're dealing with, and then adjust your workflow for those things that we've already talked about in this video. That's making sure, for example, that you work in sRGB for the color space, which I believe comes as the default option in most programs. And then obviously doing things like sharpen and work with the colors and details in your post to make sure that they show up appropriately for Instagram, even though that may not be the same way that you edit a picture, for example, to print. All right, so that's all the tips I have for you in this video. Thank you for sticking around for that Workflow Wednesday. And if it helped you out, before you leave, make sure to leave a like, Leave a comment down below if there's something you'd like to see or something related to this video. Maybe there's a setting that you use that I didn't mention that makes all the difference for you. Leave it in the comments so that we can all learn. Make sure you share, tell a friend, and most importantly, subscribe. So until next time, go out there and create something. La vedere.